Scotland versus Ireland. It's a game that will be becoming increasingly important for both teams over the next 2 years. Both teams being drawn in Pool B for the World Cup in 2023, along with defending champions South Africa. The winner of this game, while deciding potentially who even makes it out of the pool stage, may also be the determination on who will go on to play against New Zealand in the quarter-finals. Winning this fixture will become an increasing target for both teams to avoid a difficult World Cup run, and the odds before this game were massively in the favour of Ireland. In the last 10 meetings between these sides, Ireland have won 9 of them, spanning from 2014 through to 2020. And most years, from a third-party perspective like myself, it's a game Ireland are expected to win, but this year had a slightly different build-up. Ireland in an unusual position, narrowly losing their first 2 games to Wales and France in the worst start to a Six Nations ever, are also struggling with some half-back partnerships not living up to expectations, and fly halves playing below par began to raise some concerns for the men in green, but a confident and convincing win over Italy has managed to steady the ship a little. Meanwhile, Scotland seemed to be improving, beating England in a dominant opening performance in Twickenham and a narrow 1-point loss to Wales. Even with a red card, Scotland look hungry to perform at this Six Nations. So much so that before the kickoff this year was even underway, Ireland and Scotland find themselves next to each other in the world rankings, and it was set to be the tightest contest between the two sides in a long time. And this game certainly did not disappoint. The final score, Ireland 27, Scotland 24. A tight-knit, tooth-and-nail battle summed up with a tight scoreline. But Ireland just managing to grab that extra 10%. So the question is, how did Ireland beat Scotland, and what does it mean going forward? And there's a lot to talk about in this game, from bonkers tries that you can't believe were scored, to tries that people believe weren't scored, to a referee involved in more tackles than some of the players. This game had it all, and while watching as an outsider supporting neither team, I got to enjoy every minute of it. But this game came down to fine margins, the final score only separated by about 10%, and on first watching, it was hard to see where that little extra step came from. But on reviewing, I think I've managed to discover the 3 key fundamentals that decided the outcome of this game: set pieces, breakdown technique, and kicking. The set piece in rugby is an incredibly useful tool. Whether you focus on scrums or a line-out, getting it right can not only give you a solid platform to begin an attack, but also be a huge corruption to your opponents. Scotland have performed well in their scrums, and before this game were on a 92% success rate in line-outs so far in the tournament. And these sort of stats have allowed them to have a strong platform to allow strike runners to attack, find gaps, and use set plays to help penetrate defences. We saw in rounds 1 and 2 how dangerous the Scotland backs can be. An entire back row of fast ball carriers really allow Scotland to make huge meters and find gaps. The best time for this is just after a set piece where forwards are tied up and there's much fewer defenders out wide. The Ireland team, while defending well this Six Nations, have certainly fallen prey to fast players getting around the defences when going out wide. The way to minimise the impact of the Scotland backs is to target this strong platform and force Scotland to play them more head-on. And Ireland do brilliantly in this game at simplifying it down. While most teams tend to favour 2 or maybe even sometimes just 1 player at the line-out jump, Ireland actually have 3 in this game in the form of Ian Henderson, James Ryan and Tadhg Beirne. Meanwhile, Scotland don't have a go-to jumper and tend to just switch depending on the situation. With this many options, it's no wonder Ireland arguably have the strongest line-out in the tournament, not just giving you multiple options on their own ball, but also defensively. In this game, Scotland had 8 lineouts and lost 6 of them, and losing 75% of their lineout shows just how good the Ireland tactic was. The premise is relatively simple. While setting up the lineout, Ryan, Beirne and Henderson all stand in the middle of the lineout in that order. Meaning whether the ball is thrown short, middle or long, Ireland can pivot to that player and allow for the contest. Normally, we see teams trying to guess where their opponents will throw and move their top guy into place to try and intercept. The counterbalance to this means that your lift will always tend to be slightly behind as you're waiting to see what the opponents will do. But Ireland's tactic is sort of the opposite. Rather than watching the opponents, they simply throw their cards down on the table and instead set where they want their players to jump, and simply wait for the throw and act accordingly. With the 3 main players already in position, it means no matter where Scotland throw, Ireland are already in position to match the jump and make the competition for the ball that much more equal. And while it doesn't result in a 100% success rate, it does give control back to you in a defensive lineout. Mainly because the hooker needs to be more accurate with the throw than usual. Not just to find his man, but also to avoid Irish players that may end up even being in the air first. This leads to pressure and forces the hooker to become more desperate and attempt throws they weren't even planning on using or may not have even practiced before the game, which more often than not tends to work out even worse. Scotland in this game simply couldn't adapt to the new Irish style at the lineout, and towards the end of the game we saw Scotland choosing to take scrums and even tap and goes because they knew they couldn't compete at the lineout. It also meant that Scotland were limited in how useful their backs could be from set pieces, and the counter effect, how much ball carrying Ireland were able to use, knowing they could rely on their lineout and smash the ball into the tackle line. Moving us on to the second point, breakdown technique. The way teams play at the breakdown can have a huge impact on the momentum of the game, and with new rules coming in around the breakdown in the last 18 months or so for safety reasons but also to help speed up the game, teams are constantly looking for ways to utilise the breakdown area for their own advantage. Turnovers are becoming more commonplace at the breakdown now. Every team is incorporating more players specifically for jackling at the breakdown. Normally flankers are the standard go-to jacklers, but teams are slowly implementing it into every role. Players like Itoje for England and even Wyn Jones as a prop is doing well at it for Wales. Jackling is becoming a much easier way to turn the ball over at the breakdown, and with every team having specialists at it, being able to support your own man at the breakdown is imperative. Currently in the top 5 turnover players in the tournament, Ireland fill out the top 3, with Scotland having the brilliant Hamish Watson in 4th. With all of these danger men on the field, Scotland in this game opt for a quick clear-out scheme. No matter who the ball carrier is, the player will always attempt to fall north-south when in a tackle, with their feet towards the scrum half. And the nearest 2 players to the tackle ruck over the ball to clear out and reveal the ball for Ali Price. It's a tried and tested method, allowing a skilled scrum half to have quick ball and give it to the distributors. There are certain negatives too. Committing 2 men minimum to every breakdown, while safer, does mean after a few quick phases, forwards can be left in short supply. And with it always being the 2 nearest available players performing the clear out, it does mean key players like Hogg and Finn Russell find themselves involved in the rucks. All of this means that Scotland had to slow down their own attack and allow their backs to reset. This technique does also rely on the rucking players to have a good technique at the breakdown, and even though Scotland adopted the safer method in this game, and players like Watson and Ritchie are brilliant at it, there have still been examples of players not clearing out the jackler or simply rucking illegally when they know the penalty is coming. The most obvious being Xander Fagerson in the Wales game, but in this game they still concede 14 turnovers compared to Ireland's 8. On the flip side, Ireland have approached the breakdown in a totally different way. Ireland have a huge amount of jackling threat. Strong lads with good technique and knowledge of the laws is why they are topping the board for turnovers in this tournament. But it also means they don't need to be competitive on the defensive breakdown. They are happy to sit and wait. Commit one man to the tackle, knowing Scotland will commit two. This means you will always have enough men to cover the wide spaces and shut down Scotland's key threat and force them to try more elaborate things. And in the event of a bad clear out, you have enough reliable players to turn over the ball. In terms of attacking, Ireland have really shone light on a new method at the breakdown. In the tournament currently, there are 6 Irish players in the top 10 for number of carries and 4 in the top 10 for metres made. Ireland are happy to run with the ball in hand, and the key to their success comes from the breakdown. Throughout the game, Ireland employ some very clever tricks when clearing out the ruck. Knowing the Ireland pack is heavier than Scotland's, they are able to throw multiple heavy units in to clear out. And while at first glance it looks like it's simply to recycle the ball quicker, there are a couple of extra little things this does. At multiple points in this game, we can see after Ireland clear out the man, they also try to flip the player. Avoiding the neck roll means there's no penalty, but by offsetting the player's balance, the defensive player also naturally has to extend their stance. Under the current laws of rugby, the offside line for the defending team begins at the back foot of the ruck. And by clearing out the man backwards, forcing him to extend further out and then pinning him in place, it means Scotland all have to take an extra step backwards and even sometimes multiple metres to keep onside, allowing the next carrier to make more ground. It is most apparent in the Ian Henderson try. As the player enters the tackle, they go to ground. Support players standing off for a second mean Scotland have the urge to attempt the jackal, which is actually the Irish plan. A jackler basically ends up as a stationary standing target who is easier for the Ireland team to hit with force, knocking the Scotland player backwards and the offside line with them. And of course we now see the effect of how well this works in this example, ending of course with the try for Henderson. Small increments meant a lot in this game. The final score only being separated by 3 points shows just how much the 10% extra either way can determine the outcome of these games. Speaking of points, we need to talk about the final point, kicking. Kicking was key in a lot of very different ways in this game, finishing only 3 points apart. Finn Russell missing the penalty in the 38th minute could have been the difference between a loss and a draw. The missed conversion from Sexton could have given a more comfortable win, but the actual kicking in game for me is where we really got to see a difference. Scotland for me have started moving toward an England style of playing. Speed and aggressive attack, quick rucking to speed up the ball, and using set pieces as a platform to launch prepared set plays, and finally the use of kicking for your advantage. All of these things combined is what saw them to a win against England and even playing really well against Wales. But in this game, the tactic didn't really work. While there were some phenomenal positional kicks like this one from Russell and this beauty from Stuart Hogg's face to his boot that proves somehow every part of him is somehow in form, most of the time in this game, Scotland tended to use the boot when it felt like there were no other options on. Little kicks over the top that led to nothing or were kicked too far were all too commonplace in this game. Pressure from Ireland meant that even star players like Ali Price had difficulty kicking in this game, and it wasn't helped by the fact that a lot of the aerial battles seemed to have been won by Ireland. There didn't seem to be a lot of reason for the kick other than just moving down the field, whereas Ireland used them specifically in hope to get the ball back. Ireland kick in this game with the intention of having a knock-on effect. Gibson Park was very good in his box kicks, finding a good height and distance to allow players to collect the ball back in the air and move further up the field. Johnny Sexton is back to a good kicking form at kicking towards the post and even sealing out the game, and it was also aware enough to deliver this crossfield kick over a bunched up defence that led to Henshaw's try, which to be honest should have been fielded better by the Scottish defence, but the pressure applied at the breakdown forces the Scottish defenders to close up, and Sexton is experienced enough to find the space out wide. All of these factors combined are, to me, what led to Ireland managing to steer this game in their favour, doing similar things but giving that extra 10% in different ways can become so crucial in the final result. But as always with these shorter breakdown videos, I have skipped out a lot on what made this game so great. So let's talk about what this result means in terms of moving forward. Scotland have been impressive in this tournament so far. A win over England in Twickenham is no small feat, and an extremely narrow defeat to a Grand Slam potential Wales team. And now, a narrow defeat to an Ireland side that, although don't have the results behind them, have still been very strong in all of their games so far. I actually wasn't too impressed with Scotland last year. A lot of people seem to herald a big turnaround for them, but to me, this tournament has shown the improvement we have been waiting for. Scotland have become a much more dangerous team. Players like Hogg coming back into top form, new running threats from set plays with the backs showing how quick they can be, newly blooded players securing positions and bolstering the team, key players bringing real, genuine talent to the side along with full belief they can win every game. And an increase in depth that means that their team can cover multiple positions with ease and seemingly not drop in ability. They have a platform to work from and will no doubt go on to prove their abilities against a struggling Italy team in round 5. And looking further ahead toward the World Cup, 2 years to galvanise and strengthen areas of weakness, learn more to be malleable and adjust to the game when it's not going your way, and a belief that even when behind they can still come back to win. For me, 2 years is more than enough to create an incredibly strong World Cup team. For Ireland, seeing as people seem to believe I'm some sort of ambassador or spy for Irish rugby, I might as well play into it, I can see a really strong team slowly emerging. There are so many class players in one side that moving forward, they have the ability to truly become a World Cup winning team. Before the tournament, I did a prediction video and had France to go on to win this Six Nations. That was before teams were even announced. Once every team had been announced, I was almost convinced Ireland could take it this year. Looking at their team sheet, they stood out to me as having one of the strongest teams of individuals in World Rugby. But unfortunately, that is currently exactly what I think they are. A team of standout individuals. Every player focused on their specific role with a great depth that mean even when players are substituted off, the replacements are world class. The problem with a team of brilliant individuals is it is hard to work together, and we certainly saw it in this game. Players passing to nobody and not working together, players in the wrong positions, fluctuations every week in performance for certain players. The team cohesion just isn't quite there, which means they won't go on to win this Six Nations and may not even take the next one, but they have 2 years now to fix it, and I genuinely think with the platform they currently have, ability of some of the players, both old and new, if they can gel together and become a solid, cohesive, united team, I think there's the potential to not just win their group in the World Cup, but maybe even take it an awful lot further. What is going on, guys? It's the Mad Dragon. I just wanted to say a massive thank you to everyone that's been supporting the channel recently. The England versus Wales breakdown video did so well, and so many people felt the need to like and subscribe and leave such nice positive comments down in the comment section. It's been a real boost to the channel, so thank you to everyone that's gone to the effort of doing that for the channel and helping me try and boost the channel a little bit and let me enjoy what I'm doing a little bit more, making these videos. They do take an awful long time to make these sort of things, to sit down, go through the game a couple of times, come up with a script, work out what I want to do and say, and then put all the footage together. It does take an awful long time. So if you did enjoy, make sure you leave the video a like, and if you enjoy a whole bunch of rugby content, there's so much on the channel for you guys to enjoy. I will be trying to do one of these for the final round. Whatever happens in those games, really looking forward to see how the end of this Six Nation goes. I hope you've all enjoyed today, guys. I will see you next time. Bye bye.